What I have here is a demonstration of the cross product or the right-hand rule with vectors. In our second semester of physics, as we get into electricity and magnetism, we'll look at currents flowing, and the interaction of the current and the magnetic field will cause a force. So this is a demonstration. You'll notice I have three vectors represented by these dowel rods. One is I, one is B, and one is F. Okay? So when I cross I into B, the idea here is that, remember, with the right-hand rule, we take our fingers of our right hand, we point them in the direction of the I, and we imagine with the palm of our hand pushing I into B. Then our thumb points the direction of the force. So I crossed into B gives me a force upward. Hopefully you can see the relationship there. I pushed into B gives me a force. The force is always noticed perpendicular to both of these vectors that are being crossed together. Now the interesting thing is, if I were to cross I into B and the orientation were like this, I crossed into B would cause my finger to point this direction, my thumb to point this direction. So I crossed into B, again, the thumb points the direction of the force. You follow? I pushed into B, force is that direction. Right? So the orientation of these is important, and the order in which they're being crossed. If B was being crossed into I, force this way. If it was this direction, B crossed into I gives me force that way. Okay? Turns out that nature tends to be right-handed, which means that I tends to be crossed into B. Okay? That's the way that nature has this relationship set up in electricity and magnetism. So vector I crossed into vector B, right hand, palm of my hand, pushing, imagining, pivoting I to line up with B, my force goes that way. That's the way nature is set up with the relationship between I, B, and F here, but it would apply to any two vectors being crossed together with a cross product. Vector A, for example, crossed into vector B gives me a vector C that is perpendicular to both of the vectors. So if these two vectors lay in the same plane, basically, or laying together in the same plane, the force vector or the cross product will always be perpendicular to both of those vectors.